So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maurya Hanspal, and in this session, we're going to talk about the leverage analysis. Leverage analysis. Great. So see, when we talk about leverage, we talk about debt basically. How much levered the firm is, or how much debt the firm has taken. When we talk about in case of the leverage analysis. But if we dig deep into the field of finance, and for all the students who are already pursuing the courses of BBA or BCom or MBA, they know that there are three kinds of leverages. One is the operating leverage, the other is the financial leverage, and the third one is the combined leverage, which is the simplest one. So once you have understanding about the operating leverage and financial leverage, you can do the combined leverage as well. That is one scenario you need to look upon as well. So first of all, let's talk with the operating leverage, and that is the first leverage or the first matter of discussion. So see, like whenever we talk about operating leverage now, it basically includes the operating cost of the firm or the fixed cost of the firm. And what can be the fixed cost of the firm? Fixed cost of the firm can be the plant, machinery, building which the company is acquiring or purchasing. उन चीजों को खरीद कर is the company able to get a return? Because ultimately these things of fixed assets or hard-earned assets are the long-term assets of the company. And why have the company purchased or acquired these assets? The companies have purchased or acquired these assets only for the purpose of getting a long-term return and not a short-term return. Because, for example, if the company has purchased a machinery of 5 lakh rupees, the company won't be making in the least possible scenario, like 5 lakh rupees or more than that in 1 year. The company can make also, like if the sales are so high, but the company plans to earn it after more than 1 year. And ultimately, what I said just 1 second back, sales must be high. Because ultimately from all these fixed costs of operations, your plant, machinery, or building in which you are carrying out your operations, ultimately your main purpose is sales. So when we talk about operating leverage, it basically means how much your sales are able to contribute towards your profitability. How much your sales is able to contribute towards your profitability. And your profitability can be categorized in terms of your contribution margin, we can say. I'll talk about the contribution word, contribution by sales. So basically, sales company की कितना support कर रही है contribution को. Okay. Ideally, we say that the leverage of the company must be as low as possible because debt, यहाँ पे debt की बात नहीं हो रही है. Debt का दूसरा kind का leverage होता है. But here we're just talking about the operating leverage in which we are taking into consideration the fixed costs, only the fixed cost of the company. And on the basis of fixed cost, sales are being done. And ultimately on the basis of sales, why are you doing sales? Because you want profitability. So how much on the basis of that you can have the contribution? Now, what is the contribution? You have sales. You can have the sales amount. From the sales, when you subtract the variable cost amount, you get your contribution. And when you subtract the fixed cost from your contribution, you get your profit. So ultimately, sales must be higher than your variable cost. अगर वेरिएबल कॉस्ट ही हायर है सेल्स से, एक्सपेंस ही हायर है सेल्स से, तो कंट्रीब्यूशन भी नेगेटिव में होगा, देन ऑपरेटिंग लेवरेज का कॉन्सेप्ट ही खत्म हो जाता है. व्हाट्स योर वेरिएबल कॉस्ट? द वेरिएबल कॉस्ट बेसिकली डिपेंड्स अपॉन योर ऑपरेटिंग एक्टिविटीज एंड लाइक इट्स बेसिकली नॉट फिक्स्ड. प्लांट मशीनरी है, तुम उसका रेंट दे रहे हो, तुम अपने वर्कर्स को सैलरी दे रहे हो, दैट्स फिक्स्ड अप टू अ सर्टेन प्रोडक्शन लेवल. If sometime you think that your production level is like 1 lakh packets per month or like 1 lakh biscuits per month, certainly if you see that the demand has risen and you have to produce like more than 1 lakh for a certain month, so that's a variable cost because ultimately that was not planned, that was unplanned. तो उसमें जो भी increment cost जो तुम incur कर रहे हो on the basis of the condition, your existing condition या change in condition के basis पर, that's ultimately your variable cost. But it's an expense only. And sales are the sources of revenue, as told you in the previous session. So ultimately, your sales must be what? Higher than your variable cost in order to have that, right? And ultimately, your contribution and your fixed cost minus कर देते हो तो profit आ जाता है. So ultimately, it's your contribution that you want to maximize. Now people argue whether operating leverage must be high or low. Like मतलब कि क्या होनी चाहिए basically, or operating leverage must be high or low. Operating leverage must be as high as possible, because ultimately when the operating leverage is as high, it means your denominator is less and your numerator is more. मतलब कम sales पे तुम ज्यादा profit कमा पा रहे हो, कम sales पे तुम्हारी ज्यादा earnings हो रही है, and that what the company wants, right? And अगर ये कम है, it means कि sales ज्यादा हो रही हैं, like mathematically when this ratio is less, it means your denominator is more than your numerator. Sales are more, तुम ज्यादा sales पे तुम कम पैसा कमा रहे हो, and ultimately the company like does not want this. अब इसमें like further हो सकता है कि कम sales पे तुम ज्यादा profit क्यों कमा रहे हो. It can be maybe the two scenarios can be that either the price is very low, कि तुम कम sales पे तुम ज्यादा profit कमा रहे हो. The scenario can be the price is very high, basically not low, the price is very high. ठीक है, but the product is a luxury or something like without which the people cannot live. Like for example Apple, हो सकते हैं मतलब प्राइस ही है एंड लोगों को चाहिए भी, नॉट एवरीवन कैन अफोर्ड इट, तो कम सेल्स पे वो ज्यादा मार्जिन कमा सकता है. दी अदर सिनेरियो व्हेन दिस रेशियो इज लो, कि ज्यादा सेल्स पे तुम कम कमा रहे हो, मतलब या तो प्राइस बहुत ज्यादा है एंड सेल्स नहीं हो रही. ठीक है, सो लाइक बोथ द सिनेरियोस कैन बी देयर एंड दैट यू हैव टू सी while analyzing the company. That is your operating leverage, which will be as high as possible. And the formula is your contribution by sales, as like what we call it. You can call it as, yeah. Okay. This thing you should know. कि तुम्हारा contribution के basis पे तुम्हारी कितना तुम्हारा sales हो रहा है. Okay. You can even say it as your contribution by EBIT. Contribution by your EBIT. ठीक है, अर्निंग्स तुम कितना कमा सकते हो, and that's your degree of operating leverage basically. Okay, that we call it as your degree of operating leverage. The other formula can be your percentage change in your EBIT, कितना percentage EBIT में change हो रहा है, on your percentage change in your sales revenue. So profit is nothing but your EBIT only in this scenario. कि कितना तुम्हारा EBIT में changes हो रहे हैं sales के basis पे. Okay, so that thing also you can analyze from that scenario. Okay, so that thing alone is like one important thing that you can take into consideration as well. So 3 formulas पे याद रखो, और basically हमारे 3 formulas हैं. Okay, so let's talk like some of the facts about your operating leverage. It says the operating leverage is the percentage change in the EBIT as a result of a percentage change in sales. ये हमने पढ़ा यहाँ पे. Is a percentage change in EBIT on the basis of a percentage change in sales. The second point, it says operating leverage arises as a result of the fixed costs in the cost structure. If there is no fixed cost, there will be no operating leverage. And the percentage change in EBIT will be same as a percentage change in sales. So ultimately, for the purpose of the operating leverage, you must have fixed costs. And the firm is not having fixed costs, the percentage change in EBIT will be same as a percentage change in sales. The third fact, higher the fixed cost, greater would be the operating leverage, and larger would be the magnifying effect of change in sales on change in EBIT. As I told you, because higher you are having the operating leverage, it means higher you have the chance of being like profitable, because कम sales पे तुम ज़्यादा profit कमा रहे हो. And ultimately it will have a magnifying effect on your EBIT as well, because ultimately तुम्हारा contribution बढ़ रहा है. और जब ये amount बढ़ेगा तो fixed cost भी अगर है, तो जितना ये बढ़ेगा उतना your profit will also increase. The more the spread between the two. Then a positive degree of operating leverage. DOL stands for degree of operating leverage. Okay, means that the firm is operating at a level higher than the break-even point, and both the EBIT and sales will vary in the same direction. मतलब जो हमने पढ़ा था कि break-even point, like we knew how to calculate the break-even point in the previous session. तो अगर ऑपरेटिंग लेवरेज इज हाई, इट मींस इट इज वर्किंग हायर देन द ब्रेक इवन पॉइंट, मतलब कंपनी बहुत अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रही है. A negative degree of operating leverage means that the firm is operating at a level lower than the break-even point, and EBIT is negative. अगर डिग्री ऑफ ऑपरेटिंग लेवरेज कम है, बहुत कम है, तो मतलब कि ब्रेक इवन पॉइंट से कम पे ऑपरेट में कर रहे हैं, मतलब कि नेगेटिव वैल्यू होगी ना ऑलमोस्ट, मतलब कि सेल्स पे तुम प्रॉफिट नहीं कमा पा रहे हो. तो अल्टीमेटली इट मींस दैट यू आर इनटू द लॉसेस ऑन, राइट. That is basically what, like when we talk about your operating leverage, and that thing you need to know and understand in a very systematic manner. Okay, this was your first one, the operating leverage. The second one that we talk about is your financial leverage. यहाँ पे तुम्हारा डेट आता है. ठीक है ना, यहाँ पे you have your financial leverage. So it includes your debt component, and the formula turns out to be EBIT by EBT. It means earnings before interest and tax divided by earnings before tax. मतलब यहाँ पे द इंटरेस्ट हैज बीन सब्ट्रैक्टेड बट टैक्स सब्ट्रैक्ट नहीं हुआ है डिनोमिनेटर में. बेसिकली मीन्स योर EBIT डिवाइडेड बाय योर EBIT minus interest payment, and that is your financial leverage when you talk about. Okay, so that thing you need to know and understand. Yeah. The other formula that you can have for the financial leverage is your percentage change in EPS divided by your percentage change in EBIT. And why I'm telling you like these formulas, see, manually it might be like quite difficult to remember all these formulas. But in your examinations, be it you are doing BB or BCom or MBA, these types of twisted questions get asked. And at that time, you are just well versed with this one basic formula, which is told everywhere in the books, but you try to modify the question in that way. So at least like you should know the other formula as well. So in case of financial leverage, you're taking into consideration the debt component. मतलब कंपनी का डेट है कंपनी के पास, मतलब डेट के टर्म्स में बात होगी. तो अगेन टेल मी लाइक दिस रेशियो शुड बी हाई और लो. In case of the operating leverage, it was giving you the maximum returns, right? But in this case, अगर ये वैल्यू ज्यादा की होगी, so that would mean the company is having more debt. And once the company has more debt, the company becomes more risky. And in the capital structure also, through like we learned that till what point the company can raise debt, उसकी हम बात करेंगे. So when the company has more financial leverage, the company becomes more risky. So ideally the company must have less financial leverage. कंपनी के पास कम से कम डेट होना चाहिए. डेट होना चाहिए because it gives you a discipline among the managers and this tax deductibility of interest and all those benefits are there with you. But still कम होना चाहिए ताकि कंपनी की रिस्कीनेस ना बने एंड कंपनी बैंकरप्ट ना बन जाए आगे जाके. Okay. So ultimately, till what point you can raise financial or debt? Until the point when your return on investment is greater than your cost of debt, or your return on equity is greater than the cost of equity. At this point तक जैसे तुम्हें लगे कि तुम्हारा डेट महंगा होता जा रहा है इक्विटी से, stop taking more debt. And that's why we call it as a double-edged sword also. Debt को we call it as a double-edged sword. Double-edged sword. And why the debt is called a double-edged sword? Because till the point when your return on investment, or if the firm has only equity, the return on equity is greater than your cost of debt, it will have a magnifying effect on EPS. तुम्हारा EPS बढ़ेगा because ultimately तुम्हारा वो रिटर्न बढ़ रहा है, कंपनी को प्रॉफिट हो रही है, कंपनी की कमाई हो रही है. Okay, so till that point the company will do well basically. Okay, like when we talk about till that point, the company will do well. But if after a point when your cost of debt it gets more than your return on equity or the return on investment, in that case it can be something wrong for you. Give me a second. There's some network connectivity issue, I think. Yeah. Yeah, back. ठीक है. So why I was calling your debt a double-edged sword? So basically, debt was a double-edged sword because till the time when a return on equity, the firm is having only equity. If the firm has both equity and debt in totality, when a return on investment is greater than the cost of debt, in that scenario, the debt will have a magnifying impact on EPS. It means the firm is doing well. बट एक पॉइंट पे जब भी रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट या रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी कॉस्ट ऑफ डेट से कम होना स्टार्ट हो जाता है, मतलब डेट महंगी होती जा रही है, तो मैं ज्यादा रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट पे करना, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली व्हेन यू आर टेकिंग मोर डेट द फर्म इज बिकमिंग मोर रिस्की, एंड जितना ज्यादा वो रिस्की होगा यू विल हैव टू पे लाइक मोर इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट एज वेल, बिकॉज हायर द रिस्क हायर यू विल हैव टू पे द रिटर्न एज वेल. So that is the scenario that took into place. So that's why it's called a double-edged sword. ठीक है. अब let's talk about like some of the fun facts about financial leverage. See, unfavorable financial leverage बोल सकते हैं हम इसको, जब तुम्हारा cost of debt becomes more than your return on equity or return on an investment. In that case, we can say it's an unfavorable financial leverage. And when can the financial leverage be favorable? When your return on investment or your ROE is more than your cost of debt. In that scenario, it can be. Okay. Now it says ROE when your return on investment or return on equity is equal to the cost of debt. So let's figure what happens into that scenario. In this case, the firm is just earning like what is being paid to the supplier of funds. The firm कुछ खास earn नहीं कर रही है, मतलब कि जितना उसने दिया है उतना ही वो कमा रही है, उससे वो ज्यादा नहीं कमा रही. It is neither sensible nor advisable to borrow the funds in such a situation. And the firm may not be able to generate any surplus by debt financing. कंपनी को डेट फाइनेंसिंग से कुछ नहीं मिलने वाला, बिकॉज जितना ही उसका खर्चा है उसको उतनी ही इनकम हो रही है, कंपनी को प्रॉफिट मिल ही नहीं है. The second thing is says ROI is less than cost of debt. In this situation, the firm will be in fact incur losses. The firm will incur losses if it employs borrowed funds or opts for debt financing, because ultimately in this case your debt is costlier. कंपनी की रिस्कीनेस ज्यादा बढ़ रही है, कंपनी इज गोइंग मोर टुवर्ड्स बैंक्रप्सी. अब मैंडेटरी नहीं है कि बैंक्रप्ट होगी, बट द कंपनी इज गोइंग टुवर्ड्स दैट. ओके, इन दैट केस वी कॉल इट एज एन अनफेवरेबल फाइनेंशियल लेवरेज. नाउ इट सेज when your ROI, your return on investment or your return on equity is more than the cost of debt. In this case, the firm is able to earn a return on funds employed at a rate higher than the cost of borrowings. मतलब here firm को ज्यादा return मिल रहा है as compared to the cost of borrowings. The firm in this case may employ the debt financing. यहाँ पे firm debt financing use करेगा. As more and more borrowed funds are employed by the firm, the benefits accruing to the shareholder will also accrue. ठीक है. This situation is known as favorable leverage or trading on equity. इसको हम favorable leverage भी बोलते हैं situation को. We also call it as trading on equity. Okay. Now, let's say the financial leverage is a percentage change in EPS as a result of percentage change in EBIT. ये हमने बात करी. And this formula, see, आदतन in colleges and all they teach you this formula. ठीक है, but exam में ये formula भी दे सकते हैं. You can ask you. Now the financial leverage emerges as a result of the fixed financial cost in the form of the interest payments and preferred dividend भी होता है इसमें. You include a preferred dividend also. Because if the company is declaring a dividend, you have to pay the dividend to them, right? अगर कंपनी डिविडेंड पे कर रही है, give me a second. Yeah. So अगर कंपनी डिविडेंड पे कर रही है, in that case the preference shareholders have to be paid dividend at any cost. They have to be paid. Okay, but अगर वो डिविडेंड पे नहीं करी, then it is not mandatory to pay the preference holders also. Like a large number of people have confusion. They say कि कंपनी को हर साल मतलब कि प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स को डिविडेंड देना ही देना. नहीं, अगर कंपनी डिविडेंड डिक्लेयर कर रही है तभी प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स को देना है, नहीं तो नहीं देना. ओके. If there is no fixed financial liability, then there will be no financial leverage. Okay. In such a case, the percentage change in EPS will be same as the percentage change in EBIT. Then higher the fixed financial cost, greater would be the financial leverage, and larger would be the effect on the EBIT to the change in EPS. Because अगर firm ज़्यादा financial leverage ले रही है, it can have a magnifying effect on EPS up till the point when your ROI, the return on investment, which includes both the equity component and the debt component, is more than cost of debt, and ROE is also more than cost of debt. Then a negative financial leverage means that the firm is at operating at a level lower than the financial break-even point, and the EPS will be negative in that scenario, same as operating leverage. But this condition is very important, more than the theory. Then a positive financial leverage means that a firm is operating at a level of EBIT, which is higher than the financial break-even point, and both the EBIT and EPS will vary in the same direction as the EBIT changes, and that you need to know. Okay, that was about your financial leverage. Third one is your combined leverage. Your combined leverage is nothing but your degree of operating leverage into degree of financial leverage. For example, your degree of operating leverage is coming out to be 2, but degree of financial leverage is coming out to be 3. Your combined leverage is 6. Okay, so as such, कोई conceptual understanding इसमें मत सोचना ज़्यादा, but like when we talk about this, it means it is taking into consideration both your operating leverage and the financial leverage, and that you need to understand. एक और फॉर्मूला बताता हूँ इसका. Okay, it can be your contribution divided by your profit before tax or your EBIT minus interest. बात तो एक ही हो गई. Or the formula can be your percentage change in EPS divided by your percentage change in sales. Just note down this formula also. These two formulas can be asked to you. Okay. Now let's talk about combined leverage. The combined leverage is a percentage change in EPS resulting from a percentage change in sales level. Now question arises, it should be as high or low. High होनी चाहिए. ठीक है. A positive combined leverage means that the leverage is being computed for a sales level higher than the break-even level, and both the EPS and sales will vary in the same direction. Okay. A negative combined leverage means the leverage is being calculated for a sales level lower than the financial break-even point level, and in that case, your EPS will also be negative. Okay. That you need to know and understand into this scenario as well. Okay. Let's try to solve a numerical. मान लो तुम्हें सेल्स का अमाउंट दिया हुआ है 10,000. Variable cost is given as 5,000. Okay. Fixed cost is given to you as 1,000. They say you to calculate your operating leverage. Formula is your contribution upon your EBIT. Contribution कैसे निकालेंगे हमको पता है. Sales है 10,000 minus variable cost is 5,000. You got your numerator as 5,000 contribution. How to find the EBIT? Subtract fixed cost 1,000 from it. You get 4,000. 5,000 by 4,000 by 4. Percentage में करना है into 100 कर सकते हो if you want. Okay. That thing can be done by you easily. Okay. 125%. सिंपल मैथ्स कर रहा हूँ, ठीक है। डेसिमल्स में करोगे तो 1.25 आ जाएगा. Or either they can give you like directly that the contribution margin is this and like EBIT is this and calculate it. The other scenario they can give you key EBIT in year 1 was 2000, in year 2 it got 4000. Similarly, your sales in year 1 was like 500 and it gone up to like 600 the next year. Calculate EBIT. Same cheese, percent calculate your operating leverage. The percentage change in EBIT कितना हो जाएगा? ट्वाइस ही हो गया, 100% ही बढ़ गया, 1 ही हो गया. बाइक सेल्स कितनी बढ़ी है? 600 माइनस 500 बाय 500, 1/5 बाय 1/5, 5% आंसर आ रहा है. ओके, so by this means also like they can ask you what they can save in terms of financial leverage में they can give you EBIT कैलकुलेट करने को बोल सकते हैं बाय द होल प्रोसेस जो हमने करा. लाइक इन द केस ऑफ ऑपरेटिंग लेवरेज दिया हुआ है 10,000 रुपीज. हो सकता है क्वेश्चन में दे दें कि डेट इज लाइक 1 लाख रुपीज, उस पर मतलब 20% का इंटरेस्ट पे कर रहे हो तुम, ठीक है. मतलब तुम लाइक 20,000 पे कर रहे हो तो माइनस 20,000 रुपीज कितना आ गया? 80,000. फॉर्मूला इज और EBIT बाय PBT 1 लाख बाय 80,000. 4 0 कटी, 4 0 कटी. It's 10/8, 5/4, again 1.25. How ironic it is. Similarly, you can calculate in this scenario also. अब combined leverage में कुछ नहीं होगा. combined leverage में either they will give you मतलब सारी वैल्यू दे देंगे, मतलब कि ऑपरेटिंग लेवरेज निकालो अलग से. The first part of the question might be to calculate the operating leverage. The second part of the question might be to calculate financial leverage. And once you have calculated both the operating leverages and financial leverages, just multiply both of those. Operating leverage into the financial leverage and you will get your combined leverage. So that thing can also be asked you in the exam as well. Okay. So these things are important like when you do it. So let me say like if we can have one more question for you. How to calculate financial leverage if you have a preferred dividend also. लिख लो formula. If you have a preferred dividend also, EBIT divided by your profit before tax minus your preferred dividend divided by 1 minus tax rate. ये formula. And divide बस इस part को करें. For example, if they say in the question that your EBIT is 2 lakh rupees. Okay. Your profit, your interest payment was 30,000 rupees. तो ये तुम्हारा 1,70,000 आ गया. Your preferred dividend is 36,000 and your tax payment is 40%. जब ये पूरा solve करोगे, you'll get 1.818. That is the scenario like when you have a preferred dividend also. तो उसमें ये वाला फॉर्मूला हो जाता है, बट यहाँ तक फॉर्मूला सेम है, बट एक एक्स्ट्रा एक preferred dividend का भी आ जाता है. और like that this part you are